Francis Michael Scharosch, born March 9th, 1950. The funny thing about funerals is you tend to learn a lot about a lost friend or family member's life that you may have never known otherwise. I'll start with the fact that 99.9% of people who hear Francis Scharosch say, "Who's that?" As my father nearly cringed when he heard Francis, all his close friends and family all know him by Mick, Mickey, or Mick Dundee. When a call came into our house, our home phone, and they asked for Francis Scharosch, the phone got hung up as quickly as one picked it up because it was a dead giveaway as a telemarketer. Poor telemarketer never stood a chance. As Mick went through life, there are a few phrases that I believe describe him. Friendly, carefree, loving, proud, spirited, hardworking, and a devout Christian. Through my father's years, he came across so many people. He always made sure to be extremely kind and friendly to everyone that came across his life. Through his career in facility management at the University of Mary and the state capitol, and then later at his post-retirement hobby of Lowe's, there were an endless number of people he'd take time out of the day to talk to and make sure their day was going well. Anyone you talked to at Lowe's would say he was always shooting the breeze with customers. I heard so many stories about him seeing and talking to this person or that person that day, and not a whole lot of stories about making a big sale. It kind of speaks to the person who he is and what his personality is. Everywhere we go, he'd know somebody and have to stop and talk to them, sometimes to my mother's irritation when we'd be in a hurry. Here he goes again, and we roll our eyes at each other. As we look at each other and roll our eyes, and then even the last few weeks, I've had countless people who have reached out one way or another saying how nice, friendly, and caring he was to them. I think anyone who can picture my father will instantly picture that smile, and how he always had a positive attitude towards everything. He was always smiling. My father always maintained a positive attitude in life, even when there was many times he could have easily went a different direction with it. However, I will say if you ever wanted to see him annoyed or aggravated, be late or make him late for something, anything. There are people who are late, there are people that are right on time, there are people that are early, and then there was my father. He would be 30 minutes early to every function he'd go to. And if he was driving, you better be ready early too, or else you might look outside and find you need to find another ride because there you were standing. He left already because he wasn't feeling early enough. This was very pronounced every week when he went to church. Due to my father's obsession of being early for things, he would make us show up to a typical church service 45 minutes before it even started. First one's there, he'd say. When it came to his faith in God, my father always spoke about putting everything you can into God and he will provide. As a kid, there were many times I didn't feel like attending a Catholic Mass. He always said this in a motivating tone and not a threatening one, but his comment would always be, if you had a bad week, you can't blame it on God. If you can't give him 1 hour a week, why should he give you the time either? Those words truly spoke to how much he wanted faith to be central in his life and also extended and encouraged that faith in his family. My father's faith didn't stop as he walked out the church, though. He demonstrated many quiet, outward signs of faith. One example was a St. Christopher necklace, which he never took off in all the years I remember. Many people, especially now, pass the time in the bathroom on social media or reading a magazine. My father spent his time with the Word of God. He always left the Bible by the sink. He never pushed it on anyone, but quietly just left it there for himself because he wanted more. As everyone has their fair share of hobbies, my father had his too. When I was younger, he enjoyed camping, where he'd pull our camper behind his beat-up Jeep that had a piece of sheet metal covering a hole in the floorboard, and he'd go by the CB name, Tequila Kid. He also really enjoyed fishing and hunting. He wasn't a champion sportsman by any means, but he definitely loved the outdoors and the simple things that came with it. I also don't know how he got into it, but he had a massive collection of stamps, cards, and coins. I never understood it, but all that matters is he really enjoyed it, especially when it was tougher for him to get around later in life. The one thing I can say my father truly loved his entire life was music. Many of you have heard about all the jam sessions where my dad played the bongos. When it wasn't the bongos, it was his leg, the table, whatever random thing he could hit and try to keep beat. Many times it wasn't the right beat, maybe because of too many few Jack Cokes, but being the person he was, he didn't care what anyone else thought about it. But man, did he enjoy it, and it was awesome to see him have that much fun while he did it. Once I got older, I kept my family pretty busy running all over sporting events. He would drive to Colorado, Minnesota, Arkansas, Nebraska, Iowa, and on and on. Whether or not he ever got sick of driving or traveling, all he ever expressed was how much fun he had doing it. As I became older and the traveling for me became less of a thing, he did get to enjoy some traveling himself. His famous fishing trips to Canada and the Great Lakes, going with friends to Nashville, multiple Las Vegas trips, going to their condo in Arizona, just to name a few. As a child, we grow up to see one side, or shall I say one phase of our parents' life. One thing you don't see as a child in the parent-child relationship is who your parents were as children. You don't get to see who they were as a child and what led them to become the person they are. I know growing up on the farm outside of the Hazen-Beulah area, his family had some hard times, very similar to most farm families at that time. As I was raised, I also know times weren't always rosy physically and financially either. But from the perspective of their child, I would have never known different. I wasn't given a silver spoon. My parents always gave me everything they could, especially if they thought I needed it or that it helped my childhood. No matter what it meant for them, they provided what they could, and they loved watching how much those things helped me out. Growing up, my dad had a very close relationship with his mother, whom passed away the same year I was born. But my father and his father did not have the close relationship. Because my father was the boy out of 6 children, it was probably expected that he would be the help and the man to take over the farm. As my father was never interested in that, I'd have to guess that would be one of the reasons for conflict in their relationship. In fact, I think the only thing my dad ever did like about the farm was chasing his sister with mice. I believe looking back and wishing that his relationship could have been different with his father in turn drove him to be a very non-confrontational and easygoing as he became an adult and father. Most families have one parent who's the disciplinarian and one who would let you get away with anything, maybe even sometimes help you cover up some of those little things. I think most of you here know which one of those my father was. As he was very carefree and hated conflict, I can't remember too much disciplining he ever gave. For that matter, when I was in high school, I got a pretty good-sized parking ticket. As it was around Christmas time, I was pretty concerned about the possible discipline action. So what would I do as a smart teenager? Tell my dad first to hear his reaction. As I sat him down and braced for consequences, his comment was pretty typical to him. Well, let's wait to tell Mom till after Christmas. Since my dad and Grandpa's relationship wasn't the best and it wasn't really commonplace back then, I don't think there was a whole lot of I love yous or father-son hugs in that male relationship. As that being what he grew up on, him and I never shared a lot of those either when I was in my teens and early 20s. But as I became a husband and father, I became to realize it wasn't because he didn't want to, and it wasn't because he didn't love me. It was because he didn't learn it growing up, and it wasn't that comfortable for him. Once I became a husband and father, he didn't care how comfortable it was for him at that time. He told me so many times how good of a father he thought I was, how good of a man I'd become, and how proud he was of me. Today I want to just reiterate how proud I am of him that he showed me some of those ways to become the man I am. Even though my father's physical limitations got more pronounced the older he got, one thing I can confidently say is his love for his family and friends became stronger and stronger and more valuable to him each and every day. Through his life, my father taught me so many valuable lessons that I will never forget. Be true to yourself, no matter what other people think. Be proud of what you do, no matter how big or small of a task it is. Treat everyone with respect. Never be late. And pray and trust in God. There are many things in life you can't control, so no matter what happens in life, smile along the way. It makes every hard moment easier. So today I ask that everyone try not to be sad today, instead celebrate my father. Laugh about the good times, because there were many. Tears are okay, because he was a good man and he's left us too soon. What we need to do, as Mickey always did, pray and trust in God and smile every day, because that makes every moment like this easier.